Okay, it is time to talk about the spookiest, saddest, scariest, darkest hole of the NBA. Am I taking it too far, Clippers fans? Like
Just a little bit.
we're here to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers, or whatever, whatever's left of them. They've got two players who have arguably been top 10 players, and
Yeah.
much like we discussed about the Lakers. They've got a whole bunch of other stuff going on.
I don't know
um
how you can be a Clippers fan without, waking up every morning and just, you know, reminiscing about what could have been.
yeah,
An
totally. I mean,
alternate timeline where things just went so much better for you.
yeah, and yet at the same time, the Clippers fans are totally still kind of allowed to be like, things are randomly going to work out for this year and we're going to win the title. Like, it's still possible. It's like that's what
Oh
the
yeah,
weirdest
there's
thing about
a
the
couple of
team is.
NBA writers will still probably pick them to win the title this year because
I
uh,
think none will, and that's why,
okay,
karmically,
this is
I think like
finally the year where
this is the year that everyone is gives up on the Clippers, and they just have weird stability and things go fine, and they just get to the playoffs and do the thing that they've been supposed to do since 2020. Um, the only time that they made, no, they didn't, they made it the second round that year, right? That's They didn't make the conference. It was
yeah,
Lakers
they
and
made the conference
Nuggets,
finals
and
of the following year. Yeah, when they upset the
um,
Jazz.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, kind of where to start. There's so many funny little components to talk about this. Like, I'm just gonna say right now, there's no need to talk about the health. We can talk about
Hmm.
the health when it changes. When
Yeah.
when 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 Paul and Kawhi aren't hurt.
Hmm.
We'll talk about that then, because that's just the default for now. So we
Yeah, some
will.
people have been saying Kawhi is going to be ready for the start of the year, but I personally find that hard to believe. So
Well,
we'll see. I
we're
mean,
too traumatized to ever believe it. Like, the Kawhi will just, not speak to us and disappear for 3 months, and that's
yeah,
like,
the Clippers
I
probably have no idea if he's going to be ready by the start
yeah,
of the year either.
yeah,
So
yeah. They don't know where he is.
yeah,
um, we could go into there's kind of two chunks of the Clippers I want to talk about. I kind of want to talk about the backcourt and Russ and the other pieces they have around there.
okay,
But also the weirdness of their front court, and just sort of like us getting past some of the name recognition and wondering what their rotation is actually going to look like. Because, last year we went in and we're like, oh, this team is John Wall, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, um, Zubac, obviously. But then it's kind of like a lot of those guys sort of didn't play or faded away. Robert Covington was this
hmm
strange mystery the whole year. They just
yeah,
felt
because
like one of
he
the,
was like good when he played, but like he never got minutes.
and he didn't
Um,
complain about it either. That's like, usually a
no,
player like that's like demanding a trade, and Robert Covington just like, I'll get my shot. And then just like the whole team got injured, and then Ty Lue is still just like,
no.
no.
And also, like he signed like a 2 year deal for like 12 million a year. Like that's the kind of contract that you give a rotation guy. You're not giving a guy who's not expected to see the floor.
And just weird, like he doesn't have that many like years left of necessarily, being anywhere near his sort of like peak physical ability. So it just
Yeah.
sucked to like have Bob Covington. We just lost a full year of Bob Covington, and I want to know why, and it still hasn't really been
Well,
explained.
last year was I think the first year where people started to really question Ty Lue's rotations, and like even if you're a Ty Lue believer, you still have to admit it got pretty strange. I mean, I'm sure part of that was kind of managing Kawhi's ideals for how much and when he plays and with whom and all of that. But like at the same like the rotation was just in such flux, in the second half of the season. Like they're playing Marcus Morris 36 minutes a night one game and then he's like benched the next, and it was just so inconsistent.
There was that weird moment where Ty Lue kind of like publicly gave up on Marcus Morris after like a whole season, and people out of a whole season of Ty Lue kind of acting like he was uh playing him out of spite towards his haters, just sort of like, you
Yeah.
guys like, oh, you think I should bench Marcus Morris? Like, how about I make him the center of our offense? Like, I'll
Yeah.
show you. You said something mean about me. I'm going to give you more of what you deserve. And Robert, you want to play Robert Covington? How about I don't even play him when Kawhi and Paul George are hurt in the playoffs, and instead I put out 4 guard lineups like
Yeah.
against a team that has Kevin Durant. Like, how about I get
Yeah.
Zubac and Eric Gordon to guard Kevin Durant? Like, anyways, things got really wacky. I do think you can defend Ty Lue saying like that he had no stability to build a real rotation about it, and that's true. Like Kawhi and Paul George and John Wall last year, like there was no stability to build on. But then, given the context that he had, he just made such strange decisions that it was like aggravating for Clippers fans and non-Clippers fans alike. So I'm trying to look past all these like older established names that are still on the roster and be like,
Hmm.
okay, this team, it's Kenyon Martin Jr. and Terrence Mann and Amir Coffey. Like those are for whatever reason, I feel like those guys are they're gonna be around and they're healthy and they're gonna be playing minutes because I have no idea what Ty Lue's gonna do with the rest of the team. So I feel like I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's sort of where the if major contributions came from somewhere in the kind of younger back end of the rotation.
I think Norm Powell will be a mainstay.
Yeah,
If we're just talking about guys beyond the 2 stars that are probably going to be a regular part of the rotation, whether or not they're healthy.
yeah,
I mean, obviously, Zubac will be in there. Plumlee will play some, probably play more in the regular season than in the playoffs. Um, yeah, I mean, I was really skeptical when they both signed Russ as well as Plumlee because I'm like, oh, they have 2 true centers that are like non-shooting threats, and then they want to sign Russell Westbrook. Like, this is interesting. But what ended up happening for the most part is they just didn't really play Plumlee a whole lot. Um, and they didn't. They only gave up like a second round pick for him, so that didn't end up being a huge deal. I mean, we didn't really talk about what they did in the offseason. They did draft Kobe Brown out of Missouri. Kobe Brown's
yeah.
really fun. I mean, I don't know if you've seen him play, but he's just like I don't even know what the right comp for him is. He's like this very roly poly dude who isn't particularly fast or explosive or anything, but like he's a really good shooter, he's a really good passer, he's a really good cutter. He's just like this super toolsy offensive player. And then on the other side, I have questions whether he's gonna get down the court to play defense in time, to like set up to kind of receive the other team. But I
Yeah,
mean, it should be fun. KJ Martin's really fun. He's just this
yeah,
like high flying, athletic, menace. Like he's really undersized as kind of like a big, but like you can play him in just kind of like a super small ball lineup, and just like he can just be a vertical spacing threat.
totally.
His shot's been really inconsistent, which I think is the main reason why Houston was like so willing to just salary dump him. Um, but like he's definitely very talented, and he's still a really young player. But he wasn't happy with his role in Houston, so they wanted to move off of that. I mean, other than that, for like mainstays, like I'm sure Marcus Morris will continue playing this year. I'm sure, like,
But will he? Like he was basically cut at the end of it. Like he was not in the
yeah,
rotation to end the season, and it was like, and which is weird because Ty Lue was like his biggest fan. Like they
mhm.
were bros. Like a buddy cop comedy was about to come out.
But Ty
And
Lue just
then
has this weird thing where, like, if a young player is really showing signs of being highly promising and effective, Ty Lue just doesn't want to play them more than like 20 minutes a game
yeah, and that's but then he gets forced to and still finds a way not to do
to
it or
not do it.
whatever.
Yeah,
It's really hard to know what the Clippers are. Like it feels like there's been this like slow roster turnover. Like it feels like the Clippers never changed, but like a couple of years ago when the Clippers were a little bit more of a healthy team, they were kind of this like this sort of 3-and-D team. It's everyone was a really good pull-up jump shooter, and almost everyone was a really high-level defender, or was able to at least like switch a lot and stuff like that. And now there's all kinds of non-shooters on the team. Like you already mentioned, the kind of like Russ Zubac Plumlee thing. You mentioned Kenyon Martin. There's kind of like there's a wider variety of players on this team, and I really have no idea what the rotation looked like. I picked them, I
mhm.
think, to make the. I was high on them last year. I don't know. I had them like maybe finishing 2 or 3, or even like winning at the regular season, losing to Denver in the Western Conference Finals. But that was based on this idea that like Batum and Covington was and playing big roles, and they kind of didn't. Now Batum was announced this is his last season.
Yeah.
Um, he's still a really good player that does a lot for them defensively, but it's just this is a murky team to look at. I kind of like Russ coming back. He does give them that again, that like point of attack on offense to kind of just sort of like get into the paint and sort of start to scramble things. And that, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to just start simply trusting Russ because he had a nice
Well, I
stretch for a
mean,
minute. Like he was he
huge.
was the worst player in the NBA for like the last 2 years. Like I'm not
Well,
just
I
gonna
know,
like.
but a huge part of Russell Westbrook's value was like his defensive intensity and consistency when he's on the Clippers. I don't necessarily know if he's going to do that for an entire season. Like it's a lot
Yeah,
easier for him to do that for a short stretch and then for like a playoff run. But I mean, even when he was on the Clippers, like it was an improvement over his Lakers tenure. But even on the Clippers, the shot selection was still bad. The efficiency was still dreadful. He didn't become like a good scorer on the Clippers.
and
So
he's still a walking blooper reel. Like he's still just out there like throwing the ball away and falling down and like dribbling into traffic and just sort of like jumping and forgetting to bring the ball with him when he jumps. Like people are like, oh well, like yeah, it's tough in the half court, but Russell Westbrook can boost your transition game. I'm like, he's the least efficient transition ball handler in the
yeah, he
NBA.
can't he
Like it's
can't
like
finish when
he
he's
can't finish, and he can't, and
yeah.
like he turns the ball over all the time. Like I don't get it. Like we got a cool fun Russ moment, but for people to be like, yeah, that's the new normal for Russ, I think is a bit much.
Yeah, I mean, in the 5 game series against the Suns, Russ had one good game. He had a couple of games that were really rough. And then he had like, game one, he had that moment against Devin Booker, but I don't necessarily know that he had a great 48 minutes overall. It was more just like a couple of highlights, like a
I
play
think if you're
here or
going to
there.
give Russell Westbrook the ball like that and let him go to work, he's going to have some. He's going to generate some highlights. He's going to do some cool heroic things. He's going to put up some numbers, but like this is, it's not like we're going to win basketball games doing this. And if
Yeah.
the Clippers are going to be good, it's going to involve those unhealthy boys being healthier boys, and I don't know what that has to do with Westbrook. And I don't buy the idea of him as a minutes eater either. That's going to keep them stable or whatever. I don't know. This is we're haters on this episode. I'm just gonna like I don't know if this is just the team this bracket, or if Simon and I are in a mood today, but like we had a nice little break there with the Pelicans, but we had a lot
Well,
of
these aren't our favorite teams. I mean, full
yeah.
disclosure here. I don't think either of us is a huge fan of either of the LA teams. So
Even when we were saying nice things, it felt like I felt like, oh, I gotta say some nice things to legitimize our opinions, so we can give our real true hater opinions
yeah,
of these guys. I've always liked the idea of the Clippers. It's just the reality has been too frustrating for too long for me not to come out a little bit as we talk about them. I think like this team has just been very frustrating, and I think Clippers fans know that better than we do. So at least
mhm.
let's say that we're empathizing with you as far as that goes. And I would love a situation where some of these young guys popped a little bit. They got better health, and this team was surprisingly unfrustrating this year. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I mean, I like the Jordan Miller pickup. They signed Jordan Miller to a two-way. He was like a really important piece of Miami, which was one of the best college basketball teams in the
Mm-hmm.
country. Made a surprise Final Four run last year. He's just like highly versatile, stabilizing presence. He's an older rookie, so he might be, a bit more experienced, ready to play right away. I think he was a 5 year college player.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've always liked him. So they also have Brandon Boston and Jason Preston. Preston got hurt last year, so he didn't really play. Brandon Boston's just kind of been, the young guy relegated to the bench, hasn't had much of an opportunity yet, but like both those guys are talented. So
very talented. Yeah, and like I said at one point during this Clippers segment, like I wouldn't be surprised if it was the young guys that actually surprisingly boosted the Clippers this year. These guys
I
that we're
hope
not
so.
sure if
That
are going
would
to play,
that
but
would make the Clippers infinitely more fun.
yeah, I'm hoping for that fun, because if it's got to be about Marcus Morris and Russell Westbrook, like I'm not tuning in. I'm gonna be forced to watch them a couple times, and I'm gonna be avoiding this
You're
team.
not a
So
fan of the Nick Batum small ball. 5 lineups.
I am a fan of that. They didn't give it to me enough.
Yeah,
They signed Mason Plumlee.
yeah, that's
I
true.
was like, I absolutely wanted Robert Covington, Nick Batum, defensive front courts. Both those guys can like protect the rim, guard bigger bodies, like helping man. There, it was a wet dream for me, who's a huge fan of those kinds of defenders, and they
That
withheld it all year. They
that
didn't let
lineup
me
just
have
makes
it.
it makes too much sense to play, so the Clippers
Yeah,
aren't going to do it.
Ty Lue could just feel how horny I was for it, and he was like, just needed to withhold it from me.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Ty Lue.
Yeah.
Now I'm just frustrated. Any more Clippers thoughts?
I still had them making the playoffs. I mean, I don't know why. Like,
We both had them like as the highest team in this group. I'm just checking our
yeah,
list now. You had the Clippers at 14. I had them down at 16. Vegas had them at 10. So
yeah,
we're both lower on them overall, but yeah, still kind of have them
eight,
cusping
yeah,
playoff.
eighth in the West for me. So still expecting them, in that play-in tournament, likely to make the playoffs. I mean, as always, so much of it is just up to Kawhi and Paul George's health. If both of them are healthy and awesome, this team is a contender. I wouldn't say they're as solid, as dynamic of a contender as they have been the past few years. I think the league around them has gotten better, and I think their depth has declined a little bit, just kind of with age.
Yeah.
Some of these players like Batum, like a Covington, like a Marcus Morris, who were really high level role players a couple of years ago, are now just okay. Um, but they still have an outside shot at contention if this is the year and everything breaks right.
Insane too that Kawhi can just like come when he actually does play. When he came, like when he rolled into the playoffs this year, those first two games, he's just like, I might be the best player in the NBA, or like I'm the best player on the floor in a playoff series. That's like you're gonna have to do some like Nikola Jokic level stuff to be a better player than Kawhi, than a healthy Kawhi on the floor. And then he just
Mm-hmm.
like quietly, like to know it just like I didn't even, there was no like injury on the floor. All of a
Well, he
sudden we just
played.
get this
He played out the
headline.
game. He like
Yeah, like
he tore his knee and he finished the game in which he did it.
yeah.
And then we didn't learn how serious the injury was for like another week after that. We just heard like knee soreness, or I don't know what the report was, but initially the reporting wasn't like he tore his knee up.
Yeah,
So
it's always the quiet. I mean, since that like the Zaza thing those years ago that started all this was big and dramatic, but ever since then it's always like very quietly, like Kawhi Leonard has yeah, cut his head off, but he
yeah,
will play in the next playoffs for like um but it's just you'd think there'd be more decline in his game when he was healthy, and when he came back at the beginning of last season I was like, okay, he's slow. He does not
yeah. It
look,
took him a while to ramp up,
yeah, but he was
but he
still
did.
able to ramp up, and it just sort of like, yeah, still like I'm still like a top 5 player in this league when whenever you get the privilege of watching healthy me play, it is it's still terrifying. He's still the
Yeah,
Terminator. He put like the he I feel that the Clippers would have beat the Suns with a healthy Kawhi. That's just
yeah.
how
If he
good
stayed healthy those
Kawhi
years,
looked.
and I guess they
Yeah.
were 1-1 when he got hurt.
Yeah, but they just looked like they had no answer for him with that defense. Um, like I just felt like he was going to do whatever he wanted. Not that like the Clippers defense was putting up a
The
crazy
Clippers defense
resistance
overall
against.
was pretty bad.
Yeah, Devin
that's
Booker
that's the
averaged
one thing I
30s.
think. I think the floor has dropped out of this team a little bit just because their defense is no longer like baseline high level.
Yeah, they
Um,
were like a top 5 defensive team and the best shooting team in the NBA, and we know they're neither of those things yet. So we just don't know what the Clippers are anymore. Besides, like the owners of the contracts of 2 of the best players in the NBA who sometimes will play for them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No more Clippers
Clippers.
thoughts. That's where we're at.
And that is where we are going to stop talking about the NBA for today. I'm really like we're gonna not be haters in the next chunk. I think
I hope
I'm
so.
I'm I'm planning. We got some teams I'm extremely
Oh, we got the
excited to talk
Timberwolves
about.
coming up. I got to hate on that franchise.
Timberwolves. I don't want to spoil some of the teams to talk about, but there's a lot of fun there, and less less LA related drama, less of these LA teams that could win the championship next year and could miss the playoffs, and both of us expect them to come close to the ladder. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna keep spitting these season previews out. So thanks for sticking with us. We got enough of a head start that maybe we will get these out before the season if Simon and I can find time in our personal lives. Doubtful, but we're gonna keep trying our best.
Yep. Okay.
Um,
We'll talk to you next time.
yeah, everyone, just remember the ball is life. It's all you got to do.